was what you were mentioning about being gluttonous.
Mm-hmm.
The reason it caught my interest was because often we have this idea that gluttony is just like excessively eating, and it's an apparent sin. It's
Mm-hmm.
like really clear. You think back to the Romans, for example, like when they had these big feasts and then afterwards they would go and throw up
Mm-hmm.
in order to eat more.
Yeah.
We look at that and we say, oh, that's gluttony. But Abraham, I have always thought gluttony happens every day for people. The first example I would think of is you're in the kitchen at home, you're with friends or family, and somebody's like, oh, I'm hungry right now. And they go open the fridge and they grab whatever they want. They go eat it, just like slouching on the couch, watching a show, watching TV. And they repeat that every day. They don't have set meal times with their family, and they just satisfy their inner craving. And Abraham, I've always thought that having that attitude in life, having that spirit, translates into the spiritual, like your union with God. Because if you're being quote unquote sluggish in that realm, you're just giving in to what your body wants. Then what about when you wake up in the morning and you're supposed to get on your knees and say your prayers, or at nighttime you're supposed to do the same thing, to foster your relationship with Christ. But if your body doesn't want it, then aren't you just going to listen to your body because that's what you're used to doing anyhow?
Mm.
Do you see what I'm saying?
No, yeah, I see what you're saying, and I think that's like an aspect of it. Um, like I 100% agree with like what you're saying, and I think that's part of it. Um, I also think it's like we've been conditioned as like a society to think that we just need to eat whenever we want, if that makes sense. Like we don't eat because we need to eat, we eat because we want to eat and it's going to make us feel good, if that makes sense. Um and I just think god damn, I can't get my thoughts straight right now. Are we rolling?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. um
So beforehand, I told Aaron just to start
yeah.
like casually, and he
Okay.
kind of caught me off guard too.
Okay. um
But basically, to reiterate the question, earlier in the week you brought up, actually a couple weeks ago, you brought up the idea that gluttony is something that affects us every day. And it's not the sort of gluttony that we as a society typically think of. And that's the example of eating a bunch of food, like eating a whole bag of chips by yourself. We could all look at that and say, okay, yeah, that's gluttony. And then we laugh it off.
yeah.
You sort of introduced the idea to me that gluttony is actually closer to us than we would like to admit. And for me, at least, the examples I thought of was the consistent, redundant grabbing food from the fridge or the freezer and just giving your body what it wants when you want to. To
Mm-hmm.
me, that's gluttony, because you may not be eating an excessively large amount of food, but you're also just giving your body what it wants when you
Right.
want. And I thought what you said about gluttony being closer to us than we think, that's why it came to me as interesting, because I think
Yeah.
that spirit translates also to things like smoking.
No,
And
it does. Yeah, like drug use. I think it's just because whenever you indulge in gluttonous activities, you're just satisfying your flesh. And when you satisfy the flesh, it leads you to think that there's nothing else to do, right? Like, for example, you eat a lot of food that you don't need to eat. You just eat it because you want to eat it. After that, you get super tired, right? And sluggish. And you take a nap, right? Like a food induced coma. Or, for example, if you drink, right? And you get super wasted, and then you're not in your right senses anymore, right? And then that could lead to you making bad decisions, or it could lead to you overindulging in food, or like giving into lust. And then whenever you get super drunk, right, you get super tired, and then that leaves you thinking, oh well, I feel good right now, there's nothing else to do, right? There's no higher purpose to chase. So I think that's where like gluttony can get really dangerous. Or even, for example, like if you're like doom scrolling on social media, I think, for example, short form content is created to invoke emotion in humans, right? Because that's what makes things go viral. Is it invokes a certain emotion in you, So, for example, like if you're doom scrolling, one second you're seeing something that makes you feel super happy, the next second you're seeing something that motivates you, then the next reel that you click on is something that, you know, inspires you, then it's like something super sad and depressing. And eventually, like, going through that emotional roller coaster leads you to feel like super drained, right? And you've just wasted a bunch of time, you've overindulged in social media, and you're just drained. There's no motivation left because you've already gone through this like giant roller coaster of emotions. So then it's harder to get the things done that you want to get done. For example, like chasing God, right? That would be a big one. Cuz like why would you embark on a journey of like prayer or abstinence from drugs or women or food even, when you've already like done it, I guess, if that makes sense. You've already indulged in it and you feel good. So like if you already feel good, why would you do something harder to feel good? Like something that's going to make you feel more satisfied in the long term. Does that make sense?
Okay, so are you saying that gluttony can be broken down definition wise into the overindulgence of something?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it seems to be what you're saying is if your goal is to satisfy your flesh, and by being gluttonous, you're doing that, then you won't ever really want to embark on the spiritual journey because oftentimes chasing God, quote unquote, means sacrificing the desires of the flesh.
Yeah, exactly, brother. Um, Let me open up this.
Yeah, let's see what you got in that notebook, brother. I like that you wrote stuff down, man. That's super cool.
Let me see.
Is this a practice that you have, writing about your thoughts?
No, I just started today, actually. This is something that I started today.
That's sick, dude. Thanks for doing that. It shows that you care about this stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll read a few Bible quotes that I think kind of pertain to this idea. I'll see what you think about them. Yeah, okay, here. This is one that I thought was interesting. So St. John 7:38, it says, "He that believeth in me, as the scripture saith, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water." So for me, what I think that means is, I think whenever you live by material things like food or drugs or women, whatever it may be, what's going to flow out of your belly, or whatever it may be, the fruits of your life, is not going to be anything worthwhile compared to when it says, he that believeth in me, as the scripture saith, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. I think that means that your life is going to produce fruits, like something worthwhile, something that actually means something, right? And so I think how you can interpret it is, instead of satisfying your belly with food or drink or whatever it may be, you need to satisfy yourself with scripture, with the word of God, living by God. So I think for me, whenever I think of gluttony, I think it's more important, I guess, to redefine the way you live. And what I mean by that is, for me specifically, food, right? Because I feel like whenever I have a relationship with food where I'm not eating because I want to eat, I'm eating because I need to eat, I feel like it's easier to connect with God, you know? Because when you eat because you need to survive, one, food tastes better. It really does, because even an apple will taste so good when you're eating because you need to eat it, because you're actually hungry. And it's like this thing I don't know how to put into words, but your body just feels more pure when there's not as much processed stuff going into it. Because the reality is there's like a lot of food out there that's processed now. And I feel like when you watch your diet and you really treat your body as a temple, I'm not sure if you've ever experienced this feeling, but your body just feels pure in a way. It feels beautiful. And I remember thinking this. Even this was before I believed in God or Christianity. I remember I had a super good diet. I would eat super clean, right? Like no processed foods. I would eat twice a day. Only eat when I actually was hungry and I needed to eat because I was working out super hard. So it was like, okay, I need to eat right now. And it was like this weird feeling where it's like, wow, my body really feels like pure right now. It feels like beautiful. Have you ever like felt something like that?
Yeah, and it's during times that you've mentioned when I'm fasting and when my relationship with food actually changes. It
Yeah.
changes from this addiction, this difficulty in resisting eating
Yeah.
whatever's in front of you to control. I can control when I eat. And I'm not hungry right now, even though my body like wants that sugar. I'm saying no to it. And you're only eating at mealtime, breakfast, lunch, dinner, for example. And what you're saying makes absolute sense. And it's correct. Because what you're saying is when you don't have that spirit of gluttony, when your spirit around food changes, so does your relationship with God. Because the monks that I was mentioning earlier, the Catholic monks, or even when you're a seminarian, there's times that you're fasting. You're not just eating whenever you want during the day. You have set times. And so
Yeah.
it's not even on your mind. It's not an option during the day. You know what I mean? And they do that because they know there is a war between your body and your spirit. And if you can take the reins on your body so you're not a slave to it anymore, then the spiritual realm is going to be more enjoyable.
Yeah, exactly. Because like the way I like to think of it too is God isn't a physical being. So and this is kind of going back to the point I was making earlier, is like even if you're like praying or like doing the things you feel like God wants you to be doing, but you still can't like hear God in your life, because I feel like everyone goes through those periods of time. I think it's because perhaps you're living too much in the physical and God isn't a physical being. So you kind of have to take your life out of the physical and meet him halfway, even though you could never be on that same, I guess, energy as God, because you can't be perfect. You have to like meet him halfway and like give up certain physical things to like really be able to connect with God. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so you're saying that God is a spiritual being. And in order to be more unified with him, we have to give up physical things. And what we're talking about is food, because food is one of the greatest pleasures for man, right?
Yeah.
And you're saying that when we give up food, when we have a more healthy relationship with it, then we are in a way more united with God, or we are more able to become united with him,
Yeah.
because it's in his nature to be an immaterial being.
Yeah, exactly. And
Is
I
that
think,
what you're saying?
yeah, and I've just been thinking about this a lot recently because I've been struggling with my diet, and I've noticed like whenever I abstain from food, I just feel more clear-headed, more energetic to do things compared to like when I overindulge in food. I just feel sluggish, I feel disgusting, I just feel overall bad, and I just have no energy to like do anything because I just feel bad. So that's just like just an idea I've been exploring, and it's something I want to work on,
So when you say your relationship with food has been poor, what do you mean precisely by that? The amount or something else?
Yeah, just the amount, just the amount, and eating bad things like chips, and whatnot. Um just because it tastes good and it makes me feel good. Like after a long day of work, stop at the gas station, get a bag of chips. When it's like, and it's in my mind, I know I'm not hungry like that. I shouldn't eat a whole bag of chips, but I still do it just to feel good.
Do you think that your capacity for thinking deeply about these things actually causes you more pain when you do minor things like buying a bag of chips at the gas station?
Yeah, I think so. I think like I'm like painfully aware that I shouldn't do that because it's gonna make me feel bad, and I'm like painfully aware that I'm not even hungry. So like I shouldn't even eat this because it's like it's just gonna make me feel like fat, and just nasty. So yeah, I think it does hurt me, but I think it's good that I'm aware of that, because then like on the opposite end of the spectrum, it's like if I'm not aware of that, then I would just continue to overindulge and like, it's just not good for your health. I
Does
wouldn't be aware of it, of what I'm doing.
doesn't it seem like that deep awareness is a double-edged sword?
It really is, yeah. It is, bro. Cause yeah, you're like aware it's not good for you, but you still do it, and that's an interesting place to be at mentally, you know?
Do you think God, our Lord Himself, was like that?
Where he was painfully aware of things. Yeah, I think so. Because I'm not sure what part of the Bible it's in, but whenever he's in the garden and he's about to get betrayed, and he goes away and he prays to God and he's saying, Lord, like, if it's possible, take this cup away from me because I don't want to go through this. I don't know if that answers your question or if that's what you were looking for.
No, that's
What do you
exactly. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that he was painfully aware of things, and he sweat blood in the garden because he knew precisely what he would feel in regards to suffering. And also, Abraham, all the people that would reject his sacrifice and reject him. That's like sacrificing for your family, everything you have, and your family leaving you, not caring, taking advantage of you.
Wow.
Yeah, and I asked you about the painfully aware aspect because, in a way, that's why this podcast started, was because I've always been very aware of things, of what you should and shouldn't do, of other people, and that has certainly caused, in a sense, a lot of suffering, but at the same time, it creates this capacity to talk and understand other people and in a way to help them. But don't you think that it's a big danger if you don't know how to control, to a certain extent, your awareness?
What do you mean? Like,
I mean, if you're aware of so many things, what you should and shouldn't be doing, and if we as humans are weak by nature, so we're gonna do a lot of things that we shouldn't, and if as a result you feel bad when you mess up, how are you supposed to have a happy life? Because you're never gonna be perfect. And
Right.
if you have this deep awareness that, other people should be doing certain things, you should be doing certain things, aren't you just like more prone to becoming more hurt by other people's actions or overthinking things or being harder on yourself? So I guess what I'm asking you is, how do you cultivate the positive aspect side of being very deeply aware of things interiorly? Does that make sense, or do I
Yeah.
need to clarify it a bit more? Because
No,
it is
yeah.
sort of like, of how I'm explaining it or asking it isn't the most clear, but it's because it's such a deep concept that it's hard to just
Yeah. No, I
simplify in a sentence, at least for me.
think I know what you're saying. You might be asking the wrong person, but I'm trying to think back in my life when. Well, I'll start by saying this. I think, one, I've learned you can't, as far as like going like as other people, like perhaps doing things you don't like. I've learned in my life personally is like you can't control people, and so at the end of the day, you have to just accept that people are gonna do what they're gonna do, and like it's gonna suck sometimes. Perhaps if like you've never experienced like betrayal in your life, it can be scary to think about, but I think at the end of the day, people are just going to do what they're going to do, and they're human, they're not perfect, so you shouldn't hold it against them. You should almost expect it out of them. I think that's like a certain mindset that I've learned that has kind of like helped me in that aspect when it comes to other humans. It's like, okay, well, like they're human, they're going to fail. I shouldn't put godlike expectations on this human. Like it's almost expected out of them. So then whenever it does happen inevitably, Like, you know, someone does you wrong or hurts you in a way, it kind of mitigates the pain because you already knew this person is just human. They're gonna make mistakes and they have the capacity to hurt me. Um,
So are you saying in regards to other people, if you expect failure to a certain degree, then you won't be as greatly hurt by them
yeah, exactly.
when they do fail? And then would
Yeah.
you apply the same to yourself? For example, when you get that bag of chips at the gas station, are you telling yourself, I'm human, I'm going to make mistakes or failures like this, so
Dang.
I'm really not going to be that hard on myself?
Dang. Yeah, I never thought about it that way, surprisingly. Cuz I think for me, I do kind of put high expectations on myself where I'm like, man, like you're such a loser for doing this. Like, you know, you shouldn't do this. And it's like, I've experienced like a part of my life where I was super disciplined in that aspect. So it's like, man, like you've just regressed, you know? And so I'm super hard on myself in that way. But I guess I never, that same thought that I put on other people, I never applied to myself.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If you have very high standards and expectations for yourself, and if you're hard on yourself when you fail, does that translate to your expectations and standards of other people? I'm aware what you said is you're easier on other people than you are on yourself. Is that the case? Are you actually easier? You expect other people to fail, but you don't expect yourself, and so you're harder on yourself?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
yeah.
I guess I always thought that how you treat yourself is how you're going to treat others. But in what you're saying, it sounds like you're harder on yourself.
Yeah.
But if other people fail, you're going to be easier on them, more kind to them in a way. But when it
Yeah.
comes to yourself,
Yeah.
you're not. You
Uh-huh.
have godlike expectations for yourself.
Yeah, I guess when you put it that way, I do have like, I guess in a way, godlike expectations for myself. Yeah, like, and I guess that is bad. That is pretty hurtful because it's like, if you think that way about yourself, you're just gonna obviously continue to fail, and that's just gonna like put you down in a deep hole mentally. Compared to if you were easier on yourself, you're not gonna be in such a negative mind space all the time. Yeah, I never thought about that actually. That's funny. That is actually funny. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah.
It's funny because you're right when it comes to your perception of other people, how you should view them, how you can mitigate your own suffering as a result of expecting humanness from other people, meaning you're not hurt by other people when they act imperfectly. You're right about all those things. It's just funny that when it comes to yourself, you don't apply that same principle, at least
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
Maybe even most of the time you don't. So that's why it's funny to me, because you're very reasonable on one hand, but when it comes to yourself, for some reason it's harder for you to do that, or you just haven't thought of it. But I also expect that because I do the same thing with myself. A lot of people do. For some reason, I don't know why, we tend to be harder on ourselves. We don't apply that same quote unquote kindness that we give to other people to ourselves.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's just because we think that we're better than we actually are. You know, I think that's just like an ego thing, you know, and I don't think your ego is something that you think about too much or too often unless someone like points it out to you, because like it's integrated into yourself, and that's like your identity as a person, right? Is your ego. Why do you think that is, that we don't?
So it's interesting you mentioned ego, because you are actually the one that said if you are hurt by other people's actions or imperfections, that is because you are putting godlike expectations on them. So you said, don't do that. They're humans, so expect them to fail to a certain degree, and then you won't be hurt as much.
Yeah.
But if you are hurt by your own actions, if you are too hard on yourself, that means that you are putting godlike expectations on yourself.
Yeah.
So why are you putting godlike expectations on yourself? That can either be an ego thing, or that can either be an irrationality thing. I don't know which one it is, but I do wonder if it is tied into ego.
has to be, because isn't the ego irrational? Because you don't know that you're acting irrationally, like, because the ego thinks that it's like all knowing and like you can never fail. So wouldn't it is irrational, but that's just like the ego is irrational.
So how would you define ego?
I think ego is just like your identity of like who you think you are, and it's just yeah, it's like your identity. It's who you think you are
Okay.
on this earth.
So if you're saying it's an ego thing, if you being hard on yourself for messing up in a minor degree is an ego thing, then who do you think you are that would drive you to be too hard on yourself when you fail?
That's a deep question. That's a deep question. Who do I think I am? Damn. That's one of those questions you can't answer, because it's like the answer is in the question. Like, who do you think you are? You know, kind of thing. Like, because realistically, it's like you're not anybody. Yeah, I don't even know how to answer that, honestly. Like, truthfully, I don't know. A human. I think I'm a human.
Mm-hmm. Don't you think it's interesting that you have consciousness inside of Abraham? Like, you are Abraham.
Yeah.
And all of us have consciousness, but we are separate beings from you. So do you ever wonder, how is it that you're Abe, I'm Damien, and how is it not the other way around?
No, I don't think about that. You think about that?
I've thought about that before, and sometimes
Like
I
if we
still do.
switch bodies?
Yeah,
or
why
something?
is it that I'm controlling Damo's body?
Mhm.
Hey, Aaron, can I get a paper towel? Thanks. Yeah, like, why is it that I'm controlling Damo's body? Aaron's controlling his, your and yours. Our intellect and will is personal, is subject to us. Like, it's not like before we were born, we got to select a body and a mind. We were put in here. We had to have been put in here because we're here right now, but we didn't have a choice in which family or body. Thanks, brother. You never thought about that?
Honestly, no. No, I haven't thought about that. Like, I guess I've always just thought it's like the luck of the draw. I don't know. I think you're gonna have to like elaborate more on that, because I think that's like a.
Well, I mean, don't you think that that is proof enough for a creator? Because if you have an intellect and a will, you make decisions, you make choices, you are living life, and you have hands, you have a body, like you, Abraham, then how did you get there?
Okay, when you put it like that, yeah, I've thought about that. Like, how did I get here? Why was I born as a human with consciousness, you know? Or like, what I think about is not so much like, why am I not another human, but like, what if I was born as like a spider or something like that, you know what I mean? like yeah, like why was I born as a human with consciousness, you know? And I've thought about that, but I don't know if I can even answer that question. I don't even think there is an answer to that question. What do you think?
I mean, I think God has a plan for Abraham. The reason I brought this up because you said you cannot answer the question of who do you think you are. But you have a soul of infinite value, so you are unique in God's eyes. God loves your soul, and he would have died just for Abraham. So you are certainly somebody of infinite value in God's eyes, or else why the heck did he come to earth and sweat blood for us and get nailed to the cross for us? So you're certainly of infinite value.
Yeah.
But tying back into what we were previously talking about, you were hard on yourself though when you fail, and it makes you angry or sad or regretful, but you're not like that with other people. So I'm trying to understand, why is that the case? And it's not just you, of course, I do the same thing, but what is the cause and effect?
I think I'm just like that because I think it just comes down to like an ego thing. Like I think I'm special. Like it's natural for this person to fail because they're them and they're not as good as me.
Okay, can I pause you?
Yeah.
Because that's a really interesting perspective. Because previously you said you have to look at other people as humans, which means they're going to fail, so you're not going to be hard on them. That's a very rational approach. But now, when we put it under the slide of when you yourself fail, you are disappointed. And that could be because you have an ego. You have a godlike expectation of yourself. And then you admitted, yeah, maybe that is the case. And maybe I just look at other people as more lowly than me. So when they fail, I expect it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I do the same thing, Abe. I just think it's so humorous and true to a certain degree that we can sort of mask our acceptance of others' failings as an understanding of the human condition, whereas maybe we're just more accepting because like we see them as lowly creatures. It's kind of funny.
That is funny. It's kind of bad when you put it that way. Damn,
That's why
bro.
it's funny.
Yeah, that is funny.
Was there any other points referring to gluttony that you wanted to bring up?
I don't think so. I think we covered all of them. Let me see though. Yeah, no, I think I think we covered all of them. Yeah. Yeah, we did.
Well, it certainly brought up a very interesting point about who do you think you are and why do we happen to be hard on ourselves.
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation, and that can be a hard one to have. Because I never really... Well, no, actually, it's just interesting because I never kind of looked at it in that way where I have godlike expectations for myself but not for others, you know? I never looked at it that way, to be honest. And I think shifting your mindset to be more accepting that you're human and not anything special would honestly do wonders for your mental health, because it's like, okay, you fail on one hand, it's like, okay, that's expected, you're human. But then when you do great things, it's like, wow, you really did that. Like, you're nothing special, but you know, you did something great.
Yeah, so
On the more positive note.
no, for sure. So you're saying that if you expect failure out of yourself, if you just see yourself in the true light, that is somebody who's bound to fail and make mistakes, and you're not perfect, not only is that going to make you more humble, but when you do great things, it's going to protect you from ego, from getting a big head, because you're now going to see it as, oh, I'm somebody who isn't that great, and I just did this great thing. That's pretty cool. And then you're going to have this dopamine rush, but it's going to be tempered.
Yeah.
It's not going to inflate your ego or make you view other people as lowly people.
Yeah, and I think it protects you from when you inevitably fail again, you know, because you're going to fail again. Even if you reach a peak, there's always going to be a valley with that peak, you know. It kind of protects you and your mental health in the sense of like, okay, that's natural, that's expected. This is just life as a human, you know?
Why do you think men, young men and women become depressed?
Why do they become depressed? I think they become depressed because I think it's just comfort, if you ask me. I think it's comfort. Obviously, I think that there's outliers where there are people who like have genuine like mental illnesses and like imbalances in their brain chemistry or whatever, but I think the word depression gets thrown around like pretty loosely now. But I think for like a majority of young people, I think it's just like comfort. I think it's like everything is kind of given to you on a silver platter, right? Like food, entertainment, whatever it may be. I think it's just comfort and the idea that you don't have to do anything hard. But I think staying in comfort leads you to develop a certain mindset where you just become sad. But I don't think sadness equates to depression.
Okay, that's a good point. You're saying sadness doesn't equate to depression. So, what about sadness? Why is it that a lot of young adults, or why is it that a young adult at all will become sad and lives in that state pretty consistently? What do you think the cause of that is? Does it have anything to do with what we were previously talking about having too high of an expectation on yourself? Like, is it somehow, Abraham, is sadness somehow tied in to a high ego?
Mm, I think it could be that. Yeah, I think a lot of people have high expectations for themselves, and when they don't meet it, or they don't think that they're good enough, I think that can lead you to be sad. I think for me though, what I think it would be is like a lack of purpose. You know, like a lack of like real purpose. I think like a lot of people feel like they're stuck in, I guess, a system, and they want to be accepted within that system. Like, I think a lot of people, for example, maybe chase money and you get into careers that they don't really like or they don't find real purpose in. I'm not saying this is everyone, but I think this is like a big thing in like younger generations, our generation, is, you know, like you get sucked into thinking money is everything and you chase that thing and maybe you get it, but then you realize it's like not something you're passionate about or you don't find any real purpose in. And I think that can lead to real sadness. You know, like working a job and not having any real hobbies outside of that bring you purpose and passion. I think that would be one of the big ones, is like being stuck in a system that you were kind of like told is just the way to live, when maybe that's not the way you actually wanted to live.
But in the case that exterior events are causing you sadness, isn't that assuming that things that happen outside of you can make you feel sad? Like, aren't you supposed to have the interior fortitude to remain content despite your circumstances?
Well, I think that would be ideal, but I think that takes like a lot of mental willpower. And I don't think that mental willpower is something that's like super prevalent in today's society, because a lot of people can't even stay focused for 5 minutes. So how are you supposed to stay focused and be content inside yourself if you can't, you know, focus for 5 minutes?
So is the cause of sadness then a lack of mental willpower more than being in a job that you're not too fond of?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a lack of mental willpower. I think that there's like a lot of, I think there's not one single factor that goes into it. I think there's a lot.
And the reason I'm asking this, Abe, is because I find this subject super fascinating, because
Yeah.
I've gone through this for a long time. When I was younger, that's what I was used to. And it was interesting because my discipline was very high. I was doing a lot. I was doing, quote unquote, objectively good things, praying, good student, athlete, although not the best athlete, and depending on the sport.
Yeah.
But the point is, I wasn't lazy or slothful. I wasn't gluttonous like we were talking about earlier, but still that dreariness of spirit was there, and it was really hard to push away, hard to identify, to pinpoint what the cause of it was. So in a way, that's driving my interest in asking you these questions. So
Yeah. I think that's a deep question, and I think there's like not one single answer for it. I think it's like a multitude of things. I think another aspect of it is, I think perhaps it could be like a lack of community. I think whenever you have like a community around you of like people you love, or like a sense of like kinship, which I think, I don't want to get like too political, but like, I think in America there's like a lack of kinship, like a lack of unity or like identity, where everybody doesn't see each other as like fellow Americans. It's very divided. I think that could play a part in it, because you just feel like you're going through life alone without, a community that loves you. And I think community can play a big part of it. Like I said, I think it could also just be like, well, I think community plays into the love of money, right? Because like if you're chasing money, then there's no room for community, because you're always going to be working, you're always going to be trying to, be at work, or, whatever the case may be. So I think it's like a lot of things. And I think that's like a deep question that.
So can I ask you a question about that in your own personal experience?
Sure.
And if you don't want to answer it, just say no.
Yeah, go ahead.
Have you had experience with being in this state, like this dreariness of spirit, and you couldn't really wash it away at all during your life?
Yeah. No, yeah, definitely. I think for me, like, my whole life has been like that. Just because, like, I don't have the greatest relationship with my family. And so I've never had that, like, joy to go home, like, to my family. I've never had, like, that, like, oh, this is home. So, but I think that's unique to me. So, yeah, I think, like, that's why I think, like, community is such a big aspect of it, is, like, because I think that's affected me personally in my life,
And that's why I asked you, because you were saying community can be a big help, and I agree with you. So has this community, this podcast, community that's small now, but it's going to grow so that we can have more friends to talk to that share the same mindset and goals and purpose in life. Mm-hmm. Has this helped you at all, or has even, engaging with guys like Aaron and I, reading scripture, or Trenton and Michael, has that helped you?
Yeah, it has, man. Because I think, like, there have been certain times where, like, we've had conversations off camera where, like, I haven't, like, said something because, like, I'm like, man, like, if I say this, bro, like, Damien is, like, not gonna like that. Like, Damien's gonna think, like, I'm, like this weirdo, or, like, this bad person. Like, even going back to, like, our first conversation our first conversation at Starbucks, I was like, I just didn't know how you would react, but it's been good, like, having people around me who, like, accept me for who I am, it's been good, because I've never really had that before.
Okay, so can I ask you, when you say accept people for who you are, what do you mean by that?
Just not judging me for, like, my past or certain things that I've done. Because just going back to, like, as a kid, like, I feel like I've always had something to hide. Because, like, my parents, I think we've talked about this, but never on camera, like, my parents were, like, what was that word again? Like, scrupulous? Yeah,
that's
like, they
the exact
were super
word.
scrupulous, and, like, they wouldn't let me bring home, like, Goosebumps books. Like, you remember those books?
I do remember those. We had a lot of them.
And, like, Harry Potter. So, like, I would always, like, sneak the books in with my backpack from school, and I would read them at night once my parents went to sleep. So throughout my life, I've always felt like I've had something to hide, and, like, I could never really be myself. So it was just cool, like, having you, like, hear certain things and not judge me, or, paint me in a certain way, or just, like, have this, like, reaction, like this gasp, like, because I think I've always just experienced that in my life, where it's like, 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 you're doing this, like, what, like,
So did you have that experience a lot, that reaction from people growing up that they would have that gasp at you when they would find out something that you did was wrong? Or did you more fear that reaction?
I more feared it. Like, it's like not that I was doing anything wrong growing up. It was just like innocent kid stuff, right? Like I would bring a book home, and my parents would be like you can't read this. And as a kid, you don't think there's anything wrong with it. Like it's just a book, you know. And so then that led me to feel like, well, I can't be myself. Like, you know, I can't truly be who I am. So let me just like hide who I really am. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
So it's like whenever, you know, I would tell you certain things where it's like, okay, you're a religious man. I expect you to act in the same way, right? Where it's like what? Like you're doing this? But it's like you didn't react in that way. So that's like nice. That's like really encouraging to me. You know, it's like open up and really be myself.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So you're saying that because when you were younger, the religious figures in your life, your parents, would respond to you a certain way when you would bring a certain book home. That cultivated the spirit of fear inside of you to express who you truly were, which really wasn't anything bad. But nonetheless, it cultivated the spirit of having to hide what you liked because other people would respond negatively to that. So
Yeah.
more recently, when you have expressed, things that you've done in your past that you're not proud of, and you've received this response of kindness that gives you encouragement to express who you are, your doubts, your concerns, and to be more comfortable,
Yeah.
generally speaking, right?
Yeah, dude. Yeah. It's and I feel like a lot of people are like that, where they judge people like too harshly, you know. And I don't think that's good. And I think I'm happy that happened in my life, because like a positive I can pull out of it at least is like I know not to treat other people like that. Like even if I don't like agree with it or whatever, or, I think it's wrong. Like I don't want to judge that person because I don't want to alienate them, because I know what that feels like. Like no matter what it may be, because I know there are like certain like religious people who like look down on like whatever it may be, like people who are like homosexual or like transgender people. I don't agree with that stuff. I would never do that stuff, but it doesn't mean I'm gonna like be mean to this person, because like I know what that feels like to have like a large like just people not accept you, and I don't think that's a good feeling.
So then, if you experienced non-acceptance from a young age, and you feared to be who you were in front of certain religious people, then how is it that you are on a journey to become close to God? Like why didn't that drive you away from God or religion as a whole if your experience with very religious people was negative for a big part of your life? Like how did you see God as a being that was different, that would accept you? Does that make sense?
Well, I think it was a long winded journey for me. I think I didn't like religion for a long time. I thought it was like stupid, to be honest. But then I realized I did believe in like a higher power. So then I started getting like more into like different paths of spirituality. And then as I got more into different paths of spirituality, obviously like surprising as it sounds, like Jesus and the Bible are pretty prevalent in like different spiritual paths. Like people do talk about it. And so that just kind of like reintroduced the idea to me that like, oh, the Bible and like Jesus himself weren't actually like bad people. Like it's not them I have a problem with. It's more so like like when people claim Jesus with their mouth but they don't with their actions. That's more so what I had a problem with. And so it kind of just started with that realization, like, oh, like Jesus was actually like a really good person, like he was a perfect person, you know, like just like the stories you hear of him hanging out with like the prostitutes and whatnot, and like the lepers, and like basically accepting the outcasts of society. And I thought that was really cool because I was like, wow, like I always thought Jesus would like ridicule me because I wasn't, I guess, like picture perfect in a sense. But in reality, like in Jesus's actual life, he was very accepting of those people, of the people who I guess you could call outcasts. So I had that realization perhaps at this point, like a year and a half ago, where I was like, wow, like Jesus is actually like, you know, at the time I was like, wow, like Jesus is actually like a really good dude, like he's pretty chill. um and then it was just like a long winded journey from there where I kind of just left the spiritual path for a while. I kind of left everything alone for a while. And then, like I explained to you, I just felt like this certain tugging at my heart on whenever I was just like alone. And then eventually, like everything lined up with me and you, and I asked you certain questions, and you kind of helped me get started on like how to even beginning to chase Jesus, if that makes sense, like how to get on that path, because I wasn't really sure. So that was like my journey, I guess. It was a very long journey.
And you had the wisdom to not turn away from God wholly as a result of your childhood and of your negative experience with religious people. Do you think that your curiosity about other spiritual practices resulted from this sort of acceptance you experienced as a child? This sort of feeling that you had to hide who you truly were? Did that in some way lead you to try these outlying practices, so to speak?
Yeah, because like part of it was also like, part of it was just like, man, like this religion has like caused me like certain suffering growing up, so like let me see like what else is out there, let me explore like the things that they say not to do. That was definitely part of it. I don't want to say that was like fully why I went into other things. I'm trying to think of like what my mindset was at that time.
And it's hard, right? Because you're a kid, and it's not like you have this strategic plan of why you're going to do these bad things. But I'm just curious if your fear of a negative response from your parents or religious figures would sort of drive you in these directions towards other spiritual practices that aren't godlike in the good sense. But it's also interesting because when you practice those things, you said eventually you came across a lot of readings that pointed to Christ one way or another. Like they talked about Christ. Mm-hmm. And so then you went and learned a little bit more about him, and you found out that he wasn't half bad. So I'm just trying to figure out your journey, how you ended up here, given everything that you went through.
Sure. Well, if you like really want to understand the journey, I think let me see. Okay. So you're trying to understand like how I went from practicing other things to coming back to Christ?
Precisely.
Or what led me to start practicing these other things?
Both, because I think what led you to start practicing these other things is also tied into what led you to Christ or back to Christ.
Yeah, I think partly what led me to like start practicing other things was power. As weird as that sounds, is like power, because think when I started like leaning into the occult, I was at like a very low part of my life where I didn't have that much money. My girlfriend had just broken up with me, and I wanted to learn like how can I make myself better, and how can I attain a certain level of power very quickly. And so I started like researching different things. Actually, now I'm remembering more. So I did want power. But what led me to start researching the occult was a certain musical artist. And his name was XXX Tentacion. Do you know him? So he was like super into that stuff. And I remember like watching all these like clips of him like talking about it, like, oh, like everybody is a star. Like you can do anything that you want, you're a star. I remember that's one that really stuck with me. Like everybody is a star. And so then I started like looking into like that quote, which he got from somebody else who was like a great occult mind, Aleister Crowley. And then from there, I was like, wow, okay, like if he was able to attain a level of fame and power through like these certain like beliefs, I want to like look into that because I want to be like that. So that led me like down the rabbit hole of like doing research. And at the time I was boxing. And I always like to say like boxing is probably like 70% mental and 30% physical ability. So through like this research that I was doing, I found if you are able to control your mental, you're able to do like anything that you put your mind to. So I was starting off, I wasn't necessarily doing any like deity worshiping or anything like that, but I was just doing like occult meditations. And occult just means like hidden knowledge. So it was like just meditation that wasn't regular like mindfulness meditation, but it was like a little more. But it wasn't necessarily worshiping anything. So I started doing that to kind of help me in boxing, because I was like, okay, like boxing is really just mental. So let me control my mental and then I can become a really good boxer. And then from there, obviously, you research other things. I stopped boxing eventually, and then I got into other things like Santa Muerte. I started not worshiping her. Not worshiping isn't the word, but revering her, you know. And from there, I got into like some pretty dark stuff. Just like I was in a really bad place at that time. I was just doing like dark stuff with it. I won't get too much into that, but I did that for a little bit, and then I kind of just like left everything. I left everything alone for a little bit, and then
What led you to leave everything alone?
I think in the back of my mind, I think I was always like, I always knew what I was doing was wrong, because it just kind of felt wrong. It felt scary in a sense. I think just like the whole idea of it just felt like super scary. Like, this thing doesn't love you. It's just there to like reap the benefits that you're presenting it, like the offerings you're giving it. It doesn't actually love you. And if you mess up, it's gonna punish you.
So, what led you there was this desire for power, for control, because your life was not good as a result of your lack of control. So, you got into it. But during all of this, you knew that it wasn't good, that it was done out of desperation. And so, your conscience won in the end, and so you exited out. Then what happened?
Then from there, I think everything was like pretty calm for, I don't know, like half a year. And then eventually I think I just kind of lost like a certain sense of purpose that I had when I was like doing all these things. because even though it was bad, like it did give me like a sense of purpose, right? Like I'm going home and I'm like praying, not to God, but like to this deity, and it kind of gave me like a sense of structure that I enjoyed, you know, because I enjoy like structure and purpose. So I think I lost like that sense of purpose, and so I just started like moving through life without direction. And it was actually around the time that I started revering and working with Santa Muerte that I had like learned more about Jesus, because she's closely tied to Jesus in like Mexican folk religion, because she's like technically a saint but not accepted by the Catholic Church. So like Jesus would always come up in the forums that I would like read about her to learn more. Um so I actually like started learning more about Jesus in that way. So then I think like for like half a year everything was like calm. I was just living life, not really doing any like spiritual practices. And then just one day I started getting like this certain tugging at my heart, because I was like really sad, didn't have a lot of direction or purpose in my life. And it's just like I don't know how to explain it. Just like a tugging at my heart. Like I just like was thinking about Jesus and I felt a tugging at my heart. And I didn't really know what to do with that feeling at first. It was just like very strange because I never felt something like that before. So I sat on that feeling probably for a few weeks, maybe a few months. And then I know we ended up getting together for coffee with Miguel. And that wasn't like for to talk about Jesus or anything. That was just like to catch up as friends or whatever. But it was like that was weighing on my heart, and that was like one of the reasons I ended up like pushing really hard to actually get the coffee thing done. Was because like we like if I didn't want to ask that question, I don't know if I would have actually pushed for that hard, because like we were never really that close. But it was just like weighing on my heart, you know. And I knew like you were very religious, and I didn't know you, but I assumed you knew a lot about like Jesus. So I was like, okay, like let me just go get coffee with Damien, and then like I'll just pop the question to him, like somehow I'm gonna bring up Jesus and religion. Cause yeah, like I didn't know what to do with this feeling that was inside of me. I really didn't know what to do with it, and I think part of me was like fighting against it, because it's like, oh, like this is something you've been against for your whole life, you know, is like being a follower of Jesus, because like it's caused you like a lot of like pain in your younger life. So I didn't really know what to do with it. So then I asked you, you know, I asked for some guidance, you know, like what Bible to read, because that was a big thing I didn't really understand, is that okay, there's one Bible but there's different translations for it, so then which Bible do I read, you know? So yeah, so got together with you, asked you the question. I think I asked you like how do you have such faith or something like that, or like what
Where does your faith come from?
yeah, what does your faith come from? And then we just got to talking, and then the rest is history.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Where do you think this tugging came from?
I don't know. I don't know. What is that thing that they say where it's like it's a certain like blessing in the Catholic Church where it's like somebody said it on the first podcast. I can't remember who said it to me.
It was Lamb.
Yeah.
And he said what it's called. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a grace essentially.
Yeah. I don't know where the tugging came from. I would be lying to you if I said I knew where it came from, but it came to me. I don't know. I genuinely don't know.
And it stuck with you for a couple months, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the only thing I can think of is like I would watch like certain videos on YouTube about like Jesus, and I thought it was like super cool, cuz like I said, I think like Jesus, himself and like the life he lived. It's like very cool. It's very like loving. It's very, yeah, like I don't know, like it at the time it was like, damn, like Jesus is like a really chill guy. Um so that's the only thing I can think of, but it was like a literal tugging at my heart. I don't know.
Do you think it was him calling you to him?
It was. Yeah, it was. That's where it came from. But it was just like so random. Literally so random.
Yeah, because if he is real, then how would you have found him otherwise? Because you grew up in the Catholic faith, yet you tried out all these false ways, we will call it, and here you are.